All right, welcome into another edition of Carps Corner, and excited. It's been a while. Got a chance to share some thoughts and everything going on with Ohio State, Big Ten, some scheduling things, stuff moving around, and some stuff that's not always good news, but maybe there's some stuff out there that could be a little bit exciting. I want to start off with some scheduling news. So, starting off, Ohio State was supposed to play, I believe, Washington next season. That was changed with the conference movement and the fact that USC and UCLA ultimately are joining the Big Ten. They didn't know if maybe Washington or whoever could have joined. So there was some ambiguity of what could have possibly happened. And so with that, it came out about a week ago that uh, they found some holes. They've moved some teams around. And so the 2024 schedule, Western Michigan is moving. They're going to bring in Marshall as well. And then in 2025, they've got Nevada and Charlotte. And that's, I see these games, I'm looking around, and like this year, the big non-conference game is Penn State, which will be good. But outside of that, like Michigan State, and we'll just go ahead and throw this up here right now. Michigan State, it's going to be a night game. It's going to be at the Shoe. It's going to be November 11th, the latest night game that Ohio State's had. Michigan State, November 11th, will be the latest night game Ohio State has ever had in the stadium. And you're getting in now to that second weekend in November. They've had them in early November, but now it's going to be later. The problem is with Michigan State, if you look at them, a lot of the sports books have their over-under win totals at 3.5, maybe 4.5. So looking at a team coming in at that point, maybe what, 2, 3 wins, 4 wins? Doesn't really scream night game to me. A good Michigan State team, yeah, absolutely. I'd be all about it. This team, not this year. Heck, Keenan Washington, Peyton Thorne just left. I don't know what they're going to have out there. So it's not, to me, that shouldn't really be a night game. Penn State, given the fact that it's going to be a tier 1 game, Fox is scooping that up. They're making that their big noon. And I obviously understand that. That makes a lot of sense. We start talking about scheduling these games moving forward. And there's a worry and concern that, is it better now in this big playoff to go undefeated? Will that solidify you either A, a top 4 spot in a bye, or B, 5 through 8, and ultimately make sure you get that home game in the first round? Or is it worth it to play that big non-conference game? I like playing them, even though every other year it's going to be on the road. This year you got to go to Notre Dame. But man, last year to start the season with Notre Dame was fantastic. Those are the games that are memorable. That's what you get the recruits in for. And unfortunately now with Fox, those games are going to be at noon a lot of times. And it's going to be hard to get recruits in. And people act like that's not a big deal. It's hard when you have guys playing on Friday nights from around the country to ultimately get them in and experience Ohio State early in the season when it's warm, when you can pack out the Shoe. It's an electric environment. There's so much good stuff. And now all of a sudden that game's at noon, you're not going to be able to get people in time. If you get the game at 8 o'clock, okay, they can get up in the morning, they can fly all day, even if they're coming from maybe not California, but just about anywhere else. You can get them in and get them here by 3, 4 o'clock, and they can experience the day and experience everything that game day has to offer, and hang out with the coaches. So that's a big positive. Those things are going to change. I don't know if you're going to have those big night games. And if you do with the non-conference, they're going to be, unfortunately, probably at noon. And then your big games during the season, the Penn States, the Michigans, USC when they come to town, UCLA when they come to town, Wisconsin, maybe that would be a tier 2 and could get picked up at night by CBS or NBC. But you're going to be kind of scrapping around looking for what's best at night. And to me, that stinks because I love a good night game, man. And you talk to players and everything that goes on. They love night games. It makes you feel like you're in high school again. It's that Friday night football feeling. And you get the recruits in, Buckeye Nation. It's an electric environment. And you get to get out there all day long. Heck, it's like the state fair. People ask me what it's like, the recruiting environment. It's like going to the state fair out there for those night games. It's tremendous. You're going to have basically everything but the stinking Ferris wheel. I take my kids down. They love, even at 3:30. Get them down there. We do a little tailgating. Sometimes we go in the game. Sometimes we just ride home. but they love it because we get to bounce around tailgates. They're eating all kinds of great food. They're enjoying it. I'm having a couple of drinks, experience everything when we go home and watch the game, but they love it because that's the passion that Buckeye Nation brings. And there's, 150,000 people down there for the big night games. I tell people there's 250,000 people there. 100,000 plus don't even get into the game. They're just going down there to experience the environment and tailgate and be a part of it. And that's what's special. And I don't know if that's going to be the case moving forward. So we've got Michigan State at night. And then the other big announcement, they announced that Michigan's at noon, and that's where it should be. You want to make it at 3:30. If it's 1 versus 2 or something, that's fine. But we'll get into the questions of whether that game, how that's going to look. Do they move the whole college football schedule as we talk about where those games are going to be in the 12-team playoff? And that'll be a conversation for later this summer because it looks like they're maybe going to move the whole schedule up. And I mean, with the going divisionless, do you play Michigan twice in a row? I mean, how does that work? Could you play them 3 times in a 12-team playoff? Who knows? What do the gold pants look like? How many pairs do you get? You beat them 3 times, you get a 3-legged pair of pants? I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But the schedule release, Michigan State at night, November 11th. I don't hate that, but that'll probably be, right after Penn State. It's gonna be, a couple weeks before Michigan. All right. I think it'll be okay, but I just don't want to wait around all day for a game that even when Michigan State was 11-2 a couple years ago, it was 49-0 at halftime, I believe, maybe 42. So we'll see how big that gap is this year. Want to talk a little bit about this now, and this should be no surprise. Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll throw this up. Highest graded returning wide receiver, returning in college football. Like that's a bar none. Everybody gets that. Marvin's been working his butt off. You see the guys out there, today it's 4:30. They're working out in the morning, come back at 4:30, gets the crew together, and they go out there and catch balls for another hour. Like this is the way this guy's an alpha dog. He's a leader. And what I love, he's developing that culture in the room. And it's something that's going to transcend him. When he is gone, you will see the younger guys coming in and continuing to work like that. And that was something that we worked out at the linebacker room when I was there, making sure that you bring the next generation along and they continue to pass that down to, hey, we're working out harder in the weight room. We're doing a little more. We're going to do some drills. We're going to watch some film together, all those things. So you got Marvin Harrison there. No surprise. I mean, that guy could be number 1 overall. Wouldn't be surprised at all. Then throw this up here. Guy who's underrated. My man, Mecca Buca. Now, Mecca was battling, a shoulder injury last year. Didn't do a whole lot in spring. 5th most receiving yards in a season in Ohio State. But 2nd most in returning yards or in yards returning or for returning player, any receiver. Like Mecca is a top 3 or 4 receiver for next year's college football class. And he's just he's right there behind Marv. I mean, he'd be the star of stars for Ohio State should Marvin Harrison not be there. And so I love the way the guy works. He's been grinding. He's been getting after it. He'll rehabbing the shoulder, doing everything he needs to do. And you love his mentality because there are guys that would get jealous. You got Marvin here. He's getting all the glory. He's the star, whatever. Here's the best part. Like Marvin is a humble star. Mecca is great, and he's a humble guy. And all these guys just choose to work together. And it's really one of the coolest things that you're going to see. And it's absolutely fantastic. And I love that about this team is how selfless they are. And they've got some veteran players. And I was talking to Ryan about that a little bit, just the veteran nature of this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But that'll be for a later show as we move through there. But also did just a quick note, had a couple guys graduate. We can throw that up. Justin Fields came back and graduated. Bradley Robinson, the 6-year snapper, graduated. Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers. I mean, in finance and real estate, respectively, those are your linebackers, man. And we joke, that's the meathead position, but both those guys are smart players. Coming back is going to be a huge coup for Ohio State, having them there with what they're going to be able to do. So very excited to have them back this season and all of the things that they're going to bring to this team, the leadership capability, the ability to make checks, now getting coached under James Laurinaitis. I think all of those things together are going to be fantastic. So huge deal right there. Very, very excited. Heading to some transfer portal news. We'll throw this up. Taiwan Malone, Ole Miss defensive tackle, really highly recruited guy coming out. Larry Johnson loved him, and he committed to Ohio State, week 10 days ago. He will be coming here, which is huge because Ohio State really needed depth at two places. They needed to find a right tackle, someone to come in and compete. They've got that with Josh Simmons, which we'll get into in a minute. But bringing in Taiwan Malone, defensive tackle now out of Ole Miss, who didn't play a ton last year, but was very highly recruited. And I believe Larry Johnson will get the best out of guys. And that was one of the positions that was a little thin. You had Tyleek Williams, you had Mike Hall, and you needed some depth after that. And you need to get some more in there. I mean, and so you got Hamilton, but you want to have four guys. And so now you take a look at this defensive line as we throw this up. You've got a plethora of dudes that you're going to be able to roll through there because you need 8, probably 10. 10's a lot. If you have them, you play them and you keep guys fresh. But now moving Jack Sawyer to defensive end instead of moving around at Jack as much, you're going to have JT Tuimoloau on the other side. You have a number of guys inside. Some of the guys have really been moving forward on the outside. The young guys are developing too. Amari Airbor, these guys, they're getting good. So that's really key, and that's really critical to have that depth down the defensive line. So I'm really stoked about this defense and what they're going to be able to do this year. There are veteran pieces there, and you've got experience at all the levels, and now you're getting depth at all 3 levels. Secondary is loaded. You've got good depth in returning starters at linebacker and Steele and Tommy. Then you also have Cody Simon, who has played a lot last year. Then you got some young guys in there who you're going to see making a push, and it's going to be pretty impressive with what they're able to do. CJ is going to need to get on the field at some point. He's a very talented young player. So they've got some guys that you're going to be able to cycle in there at linebacker. And now the defensive line appears to be whole and ready to go. Now, 2 other things I want to get to before we get out of here. Josh Simmons, the right tackle, brought in from San Diego State. You're always a little worried when you bring guys in. How are they going to be? How do they look when you finally see them, not just on film, but actually watch them kind of move around and start working out? So, Josh Simmons on campus, working out, down 15, 20 pounds from what he played out last year. Looks good, looks fit, moves really well. Only question is going to be, it's a competitive position. He's going to get worked in camp. Those guys I was throwing up there before, he's going against good defensive ends. So he's going to get worked. How competitive, how hard does he work this season? Because he could be the missing piece. And, they got Tegra Shabola, Zen Mikowski. They've got guys out there that can play, but they just need some seasoning. And you throw them all out, you let them work hard, and you see who rises to the top. So now you have a lot of competition at right tackle. But Josh Simmons getting in here from San Diego State, they are really stoked about what he can potentially do and starting off fast. You didn't want a guy showing up 30 pounds overweight, not moving as well as you would have thought. This guy's played. He showed up in shape, showing up ready, looking like you're going to contend for a national championship, because that's the reality of these positions at Ohio State. You have to ask yourself, is this guy a national championship contender? Because that's what we are as a team. Is that position now where we're at, is that a national championship contending player at that spot? And I think that they'll be able to find that. Lastly, I want to finish a little bit with some team up north, because it's always fun to kind of get into this. Now, Hunter Dickinson, who 3-time All-American at Michigan, very good big man up there, enters the transfer portal, decides to leave, ultimately goes to Kansas. And, people kind of scratch their heads like, geez, going to Kansas, and kind of hemmed and hawed about it. There was, the announcement and things, and kind of rubbed people the wrong way. And I get all that, but this is the reality of college athletics now. I'll throw this up to see it here. The people hating on me right now would leave their job for a $10,000 increase. I got less than 6 figures a year at Michigan. That's the world in NIL. He goes to Kansas. Now he's getting reportedly over $1 million. And so for a college basketball player, maybe this guy plays in the NBA for a long time. Maybe he doesn't. But he's a really good college basketball player. Chance to win a national championship. Chance to make life-changing money in college. I'm not going to hate on that. And it's easy. It's, for him, he's a guy at Michigan. He's a target. But this is the reality of where we're at. And so you've got to make sure you're keeping your current players on the roster happy. You need to have a good culture where they feel like they can win, they feel like they're being developed, and they feel like they can continue to grow. If you do those things, stuff like this happens less. But you also have to make sure you're taking care of your guys financially, and at least being in the same ballpark, because you can't ask a guy to sit there and say, hey, I know you could go get 10 times this somewhere else, but we would like you to stay here, because it's just really, really hard for those guys to swallow. And that is it for this edition of Carps Corner. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. It's been good. We'll have a good time this summer as we kind of break down some of the position battles and where some things are going in college football and what scheduling could look like in the future as well. So please subscribe, like, share, all of those things, and we'll keep getting some stuff out as often as we can. So thank you. Until next time, talk soon.